Her parents tried to kill her for getting pregnant out of wedlock. In the dusty streets of Ikoro village, where red earth stained every sandal and gossip traveled faster than the evening breeze, 17-year-old Chioma wore her reputation like Sunday clothes. Starched, pristine, careful not to wrinkle. Her father, Deacon Okafor, stood tall at the pulpit of Christ the King Assembly every Sunday, his voice booming with scripture while his youngest daughter sat front row, Bible open, eyes attentive. Her mother, Evangelist Grace, commanded the women's fellowship with the same iron will she used to run their household. 5 children, and Chioma was the crown jewel, the one who never talked back, never came home late, never gave them cause for the whispered concerns that plagued other parents. That Chioma, the women would say at the village tap, balancing water buckets on their heads. She will make some family very proud one day. Not like these other girls running around with boys. Chioma swept the compound before dawn, the swish of her broom marking time with her mother's morning prayers drifting from the window. She plaited her younger sister's hair while helping her brother with his mathematics. She served her father his evening meal with her head slightly bowed, the picture of respect. But beneath the surface of this perfect life, Chioma carried a loneliness she couldn't name. A hunger for something beyond the predictable rhythm of church, chores, school, church again. She was dutiful, yes, but she was also human. Chikwudi arrived in December when the Harmattan wind turned everything hazy and magical. He was 18, home from Lagos for the holidays, staying with his uncle 3 compounds away. The city clung to him like cologne, in his confident walk, his easy laugh, the way he wore his jeans low and his shirt crisp despite the dust. Their first meeting was ordinary. The village well at midday, her bucket half full, his greeting casual. Let me help you with that. But the second meeting and the third and the ones after, those were deliberate. They found each other in the spaces between obligations. After her mother's prayer meetings, before his uncle's evening meal. Under the ancient mango tree at the edge of farmland where the path forked toward the stream. He told her about Lagos, the traffic, the shopping malls, the freedom of a city where nobody knew your father's name. She told him about her dreams of university, of becoming a nurse, of a life larger than Ikoro's boundaries. You're different from village girls, he said one evening, and she felt the compliment warm her chest even as part of her knew the danger in such words. The kisses came naturally, tentative at first, then hungry. His hands in her hair, her heart pounding so loud she was sure the whole village could hear. They were careful, always careful, meeting only when darkness provided cover. Until the night everything changed. Behind the old primary school, where walls crumbled and no one came after dark, they went further than they'd planned. Chioma's mind screamed warnings even as her body said yes, caught between desire and fear, between the girl she was raised to be and the woman she was becoming. It was awkward, brief, painful, exhilarating, a collision of inexperience and intensity that left her shaking. I love you, Chikwudi whispered afterward, and she wanted desperately to believe him. But January came too quickly. He returned to Lagos with promises to call, to write, to come back. The promises dissolved like sugar in rain. His number went silent. Her messages hung unanswered in digital space. By February, when her monthly cycle failed to arrive, Chioma knew. By March, when her waist beads grew tight and her mother's eagle eyes began to narrow, she was certain. By April, there was no hiding the slight swell beneath her school uniform. You have brought shame upon this house. Her father's voice shook the walls. Her mother stood behind him, face carved from stone, all traces of the woman who sang worship songs replaced by something cold and terrible. We raised you better than this. My own daughter, a common prostitute. Chioma's tears meant nothing. Her explanations that she loved him, that he'd promised, that she'd made a mistake, fell on ears sealed shut by rage and terror. Not terror for her, she realized, but terror of what the village would say. Terror of Deacon Okafor's fall from grace. You will fix this, her mother hissed. There is a woman. She will take care of it. Mama, please. Do not mama me. You should have thought about that before you opened your legs. The slap came hard enough to snap her head sideways. Chioma tasted blood. Her siblings were forbidden from speaking to her. She was confined to her room except for bathroom breaks. Her father removed her from school with excuses of illness. The walls of her childhood home became a prison. They waited until she was 5 months along, belly undeniable, before they acted. The soup tasted bitter that evening, but her mother watched until she swallowed every spoonful. Within an hour the room spun. Chioma's limbs grew heavy, unresponsive. Through the haze she felt hands lifting her, voices murmuring the night air on her face. She woke in a dark room that smelled of herbs and old blood. Rough rope bound her wrists to a wooden post. An elderly woman with clouded eyes loomed over her. Hands full of instruments Chioma's blurred vision couldn't identify. "Please," Chioma sobbed. "Please don't hurt my baby." The woman's face remained impassive. "Your parents have paid. This is for the best." But as the woman turned to prepare her tools, Chioma saw it. A gap in the mud wall where clay had crumbled. Small but perhaps large enough. Fear lent her strength she didn't know she possessed. She twisted her wrists against the rope, ignoring the burn, the blood. The old woman's back was turned, muttering prayers over her instruments. Chioma pulled, yanked, felt the rope give slightly. Again. Her hands slipped free. She didn't think. She lunged for the gap, pushing through, feeling the wall scrape skin from her arms. Behind her, the woman's shout of alarm. Ahead, darkness and freedom. Chioma ran. Barefoot through thorny bush, her dress tearing on branches. Chioma ran until her lungs burned and her legs threatened to collapse. She could hear voices calling behind her, but she didn't stop until she reached the main road. A ribbon of cracked asphalt that led away from everything she'd ever known. A truck laden with yams rumbled into view. She stumbled into its path, waving desperately. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, took one look at her torn dress and bleeding feet and made space in his cab. "Where are you going, daughter?" "Away," she whispered. "Just away." He asked no more questions, dropping her at the motor park in Asaba town as dawn broke. She had no money, no plan, just a fierce determination to protect the life growing inside her. The first days blurred together, a nightmare of hunger and fear. She slept on shop verandas, was chased away by security guards, endured the leering comments of men who saw her swollen belly and assumed the worst. She searched trash heaps for scraps, drank from public taps, and felt her strength ebbing with each passing day. Rain came on the 4th night, cold and relentless. Chioma huddled under a market stall, shivering, certain she would die there with her child still unborn. "Child, what are you doing?" The voice belonged to a woman perhaps 60 years old, wrapped in a faded wrapper, carrying a torch. Her face held no judgment, only concern. I have nowhere. Come." The woman, who introduced herself as Mom and Didi, led Chioma to a small room behind a provision shop. She fed her yam porridge, gave her warm water to wash, and asked for no explanations. "I lost my own daughter in childbirth," Mom and Didi said quietly. "I know what it is to need help." For 5 months, Chioma lived under Mom and Didi's protection. She helped in the shop, regained her strength, and when her time came, delivered a healthy baby boy with Mom and Didi's steady hands guiding him into the world. She named him Chima, God knows. Chikwudi learned about his son through the village grapevine. His aunt's cousin knew Chioma's neighbor, who'd heard from the housegirl that the deacon's daughter had run away pregnant. The news traveled the winding path from Ikoro to Lagos, arriving 6 months after Chima's birth. His first reaction was denial, then panic, then, slowly, responsibility. He began searching, calling every contact in Asaba, but Chioma had moved again. Mom and Didi had family in Onitsha who needed help with their growing business, and Chioma went with her, grateful for the chance to build something. Meanwhile, Evangelist Grace's conscience had begun to crack. Late at night when her husband slept, she thought of her daughter, wondered if she was alive, if the baby had survived. She confided in Chikwidi's aunt during a chance meeting. Her face gray with regret. If you hear anything, please. The connection was made. Aunt contacted nephew. Nephew contacted Mom and Didi's shop. Messages were relayed. When Chikuti's family, his mother, his two sisters, his uncle, arrived in Onitsha, Chioma held Chima close, prepared for rejection. Instead, she found open arms. Our son was foolish, Chikuti's mother said, tears streaming. But this child is our blood. You are part of us now. They enrolled her in evening secondary school to complete her education. They welcomed her into their home. They gave her the family she'd lost. Chikuti himself was studying in Ghana but sent money monthly, along with letters full of apologies and promises to do better. 2 years later, Chikuti returned. Taller, more serious, carrying the weight of fatherhood he'd missed. He held his son for the first time with shaking hands, watching Chioma with new eyes that saw the woman she'd become. Stronger, fiercer, no longer the perfect daughter but something better. They married quietly, a small ceremony that felt more like a homecoming than a beginning. I want to see them, Chioma said one evening. My parents. They should meet their grandson. Chikuti's mother warned against it, but Chioma needed closure, or perhaps, secretly, still hoped for reconciliation. They traveled to Ikoro on a Sunday. Chioma wore her best dress. Chima wore a tiny suit that made him look impossibly precious. Her mother answered the door and gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Joy and fear warred on her face. Chioma. The baby. His name is Chima, Mama. Her father appeared in the doorway. His face went rigid. What is she doing here? Papa, I wanted you to meet your grandson. I have no daughter. I have no grandson from Sin. His voice was flat, final. You made your choice. We made ours. Evangelist Grace's hand reached toward the baby, trembling, but Deacon Okafor's glare stopped her cold. Please, Chioma whispered. Please, Papa. I'm sorry for bringing shame, but Chima is innocent. He's your blood. He is a reminder of disgrace. Leave this house. Chioma's mother said nothing, only stood there, tears sliding down her face, unable to choose between her husband and her daughter. The door closed. Chioma stood on the threshold of her childhood home, her son in her arms, her husband's hand on her shoulder, and felt something break and heal simultaneously. They drove back to Onitsha in silence. Chima babbled in the back seat, oblivious. Chioma stared out the window, watching Ikoro disappear. I'm sorry, Chikuti said finally. Don't be. Chioma's voice was steady. I came here looking for their forgiveness. But I already have everything I need. Mom and Didi met them at the door, arms open. Chikuti's family gathered for dinner, passing Chima from lap to lap, filling the house with laughter. That night, after Chima slept, Chioma stood at the window looking at stars that hung over this city that had become home. She thought about the perfect daughter she'd been, silent, obedient, performing righteousness like a role in a play. She thought about the woman she'd become, scarred, strong, imperfect, real. She wouldn't choose this path again, the terror, the pain, the loneliness. But she wouldn't undo it either, because it had led her here, to a love deeper than performance, to a family built on grace instead of reputation. Somewhere in Ikoro, her father's pride kept him prisoner. Somewhere, her mother wept silent tears. But here, in this small house in Onitsha, Chioma was free. And that finally was enough.